Make no mistake, Jeremy Swayman was the reason why the Boston Bruins won last night against the Pittsburgh Penguins, in the midst of Boston maybe learning that some of their assets ahead of the trade deadline aren't as valuable as they may believe.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 20 years. Today is Wednesday, March 4th, and on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, we are going to discuss the storylines, the stats, and the signals from last night's win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, what it means for the Bruins, their playoff standing, and with one game remaining until the trade deadline, which is set for March 6th, which is Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to discuss some rumblings around Connor Garland of the Vancouver Canucks, new defenseman whose name has popped up on socials this morning that I would be very interested in, as well as what Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic is hearing about the value for Matt Poitras and Mason Lohrei. May not be quite as high as we would expect and may not fetch the kind of players that the Bruins are looking to add before Friday's deadline. But let's start with last night's game where the Bruins brought forth a gritty effort, some tight defensive play, and ultimately some unbelievable goaltending from Jeremy Swayman in a 2-1 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins on Tuesday at TD Garden. Swayman made 34 saves and backstopped his team to their 11th consecutive home victory, earning another 2 points in a very tight Eastern Conference playoff race. And head coach Marco Sturm said Swayman was the reason the Bruins won that game last night. It got off to a bit of a rocky start, shades of Milan, as Erik Karlsson got the Penguins on the board 42 seconds into the game with a slap shot from distance, maybe one that Swayman should have had, and reminiscent of that goal that was scored on him at the Olympics from like center ice. But the Bruins were able to get enough offensive support for Swayman before the end of the first period, as Murat Husnudinov scored his 13th of the season to make it 1-1. And then the game winner was scored shortly thereafter by Casey Middlestadt. And that was all the Bruins needed. Jeremy Swayman shut the door from there. All the goals in this game were scored within the first 6 minutes of the game. And then Swayman took it from there. The Husnudinov goal came from a Fraser Minton battle along the boards. He popped it over to Mikey Eyssimont, who got it to Huzi in the right circle, and the 23-year-old ripped it home at about 5 minutes and 10 seconds of the first period. Eyssimont, who's been in and out of the lineup lately, said he's feeling really good, feeling joyous even out there playing, doing his best to fit into his role here on the team. Hasn't always been easy, he said, but he hopes everyone sees how hard he's trying to fit in there, feeling more and more comfortable. And he really could be a guy that could be moved out before the deadline, with some teams looking to add some depth and scoring to their lineups, as well as just those versatile guys who can play up and down the lineup. Less than a minute later, Casey Middlestadt put the Bruins ahead. Grinding shift from the second line. Zacha retrieved the puck down low. Middlestadt dished it to Nikita Zadorov. And then Middlestadt knocked in the rebound to make it 2-1, his 13th goal of the season, third in 6 games. Middlestadt, after the game, said not the prettiest game they've played all year, but you could tell that the fight and the want to win was there. Guys were sacrificing themselves, winning battles, Sway making big saves, and fun to be part of a team that's putting its body on the line and doing whatever it takes. And that's the kind of hockey that will get you into the Stanley Cup playoffs and perhaps some measure of success when you get there if you're playing that kind of way. And one of the big things that was a key improvement last night for the Bruins was the penalty kill, going 4 for 4 against the third best power play in the league. Now, for some context there, Sidney Crosby leads this team in power play goals with 10. He's currently out of the lineup. So if you look at their power play without Crosby, it probably wouldn't be the third ranked in the league, but still they have some guys who can hurt you. Erik Karlsson, Evgeny Malkin, etc. The PK has been a point of emphasis for the Bruins during their practice over the past 2 weeks, and it's gone 7 for 7 since returning from the Olympic break. Hampus Lindholm credited assistant coach Chris Kelly for coming in with some good energy, helping them out, putting them in good spots to succeed, and obviously it helps when you have Swayman and Korpisalo playing the way they've been playing lately. Hampus Lindholm added they've been playing through some adversity this year, people doubting them, and they still do. But they have quiet confidence in the room, just trying to get out there and play for each other. When you have goalies and everyone buying in, it's fun to be part of. And that buy-in certainly has to be there on the penalty kill when it requires that extra effort, putting your body on the line, getting in the lanes, blocking shots, etc. And you can see that extra effort from a guy like Casey Middlestadt, who earlier this season had his effort and compete level criticized or called out by, I believe it was Craig Button on TSN, who said he just did not have that dog in him, basically. And Middlestadt last night, he was out there in the dying minutes with the Penguins goalie pulled, Stuart Skinner, lost his stick, but was still able to get the puck out of the Bruins zone using his skates. And that just shows the kind of extra effort that the Bruins are willing to put in. Swayman made some key stops in those final moments as the Bruins protected their 1-goal lead. And he earned the first star of the game in front of a very thankful TD Garden crowd. He said it's really fun to come to the rink these days. He understands they have a real chance at their ultimate goal, which is to get back to the playoffs, compete for the Stanley Cup. That's something that we can really rally around this time of year, he said. We get through this week. We know that we're pushing together, all for each other, and obviously for this incredible fan base. And by through this week, he means the upcoming trade deadline, the uncertainty surrounding that, not sure who's going to be part of the team come Saturday. There could be some guys being moved out. There could be some new faces coming in. Among those who could be moved out is Andrew Peeke, who got a look last night for the first time coming out of the break, perhaps as a bit of a showcase. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, could be moved before Friday's deadline. You've got Sean Corrali, Mikey Asimont, who are unrestricted free agents next summer, but who have pretty reasonable contracts, and teams could be looking to add them as depth players. The big fish in Casey Middlestadt, Pelazaka, who are UFAs next summer, really looking like they could be guys that stick around and become meaningful contributors or remain meaningful contributors for this team moving forward. There's also Victor Arvidsson, pending unrestricted free agent. He does have no move protection, cannot be traded, sent to the minors, or waived without player approval. He had a glorious chance to ice it last night with an empty net, hit the post, but you could tell the way he was kind of reacting on the bench with the guys, like they like having him around. So I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks with the Bruins for the balance of the season as kind of an internal rental. So those are the kind of the key storylines from last night's game. Coming up, we are going to touch on some more stats, signals, what it means for the Bruins in the playoff race. And with the trade deadline approaching, we'll also touch on some of the latest with regards to Bruins rumors, reports, and perceived value for a couple key trade candidates in Matt Poitras and Mason Lohrei. College basketball is pretty nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups. You can mix spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. At FanDuel, you can play your game with college basketball action here as we get deeper into the month of March. Thanks so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. And thank you for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. As a special thank you, we are offering 1 month free of our Everydayer Club. I've been getting more active on the Discord, which is a big part of the Everydayer Club. You get an invite to the Locked On Discord, which has channels for all the leagues, one specifically for Locked On Bruins. I like jumping in the fantasy chat as well. You also get ad-free episodes of Locked On Bruins delivered straight to your podcast feeds. Visit lockedonbruins.supercast.com to learn more. Use code DEADLINE to get 1 month free of our Everydayer Club on us. I've already looked at some of the key stats from last night's game, namely Swayman's 34 saves, the penalty kill going 4 for 4 against the third-ranked power play in the NHL, albeit without Sidney Crosby at their disposal. How did things shape up overall? Well, at 5-on-5, the Bruins had 51.3% of the shot attempts. The shots were 26-25 in favor of the Bruins. Scoring chances were 28-23 in favor of the Bruins. High danger chances were 12-11, so it was pretty even when it comes to 5-on-5 play. In all situations last night, the Bruins had a slight advantage in shot attempts, 50.7%. The Penguins had the lion's share of the shots, though, 35-28, and that shows you how big the penalty kill was. At 5-on-5, the Penguins had 23 shots, and then in all situations, they had 35. Scoring chances were slightly in favor of the Bruins, as were high danger chances, but because of those penalties that the Bruins took, the Penguins had 4.45 expected goals, and the Bruins had 3.75. So another instance where the Bruins' expected goals were, or the opposition's expected goals were much higher than what actually happened. So that's goaltending. The Penguins last night, by all measures, should have scored about at least 4 goals based on the penalty killing or the power plays opportunities they got, the high danger chances, the scoring chances, add it all up, outshooting the Bruins 35-28. And that shows you how important Jeremy Swayman was there in terms of shutting down and, being that last line of defense to help the Bruins come out of this one with a big 2 points, because you look at the NHL standings and they remain incredibly tight in the Eastern Conference. Let's just update we'll look at Moneypuck in terms of their playoff meter, as well as a look at the overall standings in the NHL. And it's just incredibly tight right now. With the win last night, the Bruins improved to 34-21-5. They've got 73 points, and they remain 3 points up on a Columbus Blue Jackets team they beat, thankfully, last week, or it would be much tighter. They've won 2 in a row since losing to the Bruins. They are 3 points back of Boston. The Washington Capitals are 4 points back. They've played 3 more games, though, so that's a distinct advantage for them. The Senators lost in Edmonton last night, but they are 6 points back. The Flyers have won 3 in a row, including a game against the Bruins on the weekend, they are also 6 points back. The Leafs, Panthers, 9-10 points back respectively, with about 21, 22 games remaining on the schedule. That's going to be probably too big of a hill to climb for those teams. If you look at the playoff odds via Moneypuck right now, thanks to last night's win, the Bruins are at 62.8%, which is actually pretty good. Like almost 2/3 of the odds are in favor of the Bruins making the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, still a long way to go, right? The Bruins have how many games remaining? 22 games remaining. And point percentage wise, they're in a pretty good spot. They're 6 points up on the Senators in the Atlantic Division. When it comes to the Eastern Conference, they are 8th in point percentage as well, 8th in total points. Goal differential, though, they're actually 5th. So you can tell they're playing pretty well enough to make the playoffs. Can they move up? Well, possibly. They're only 2 points back of the Montreal Canadiens for the first wildcard spot. They're 3 points back of the Red Wings for the third spot in the in the Atlantic Division, although that would mean going up against the red-hot Buffalo Sabres. And they are 7 points back of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So maybe they catch Detroit. Maybe they're able to sneak into the first wildcard spot. But the priority right now is to grab a playoff spot. Don Sweeney said that the other day. That is the goal for the Boston Bruins. That has always been the goal. Last year, things went way off the rails, and that's why they decided to, call it, send in the or send some guys out, sell off, and move on. Now the Bruins are back in playoff contention. They're fairly healthy and playing at high levels. David Pastrnak, some people have suggested that he doesn't look quite himself. Perhaps there's something bothering him there, but at the end of the day, the Bruins are in position to make the playoffs, and they should very much remain in the mix here as we head down the stretch. Now, I should add that while Moneypuck has the Bruins at 62.8% chance of making the playoffs, the Athletic not as favorable. The Bruins are at 41% chance of making the playoffs. And they, in fact, have the Blue Jackets above them at 51%. They have, who else is above them who's kind of out of the mix? The Senators above them at 44%. So if you look at, and they really take into account those kind of underlying numbers, shot metrics, expected goals. According to The Athletic, the Bruins have a 41% chance, which is not what Moneypuck tells us. They're at 62%. The Islanders, Blue Jackets, Senators, all with better chances of making the playoffs than the Bruins at this point, according to The Athletic. So the job is not done. They still have, and as Hampus Lindholm alluded to earlier when I was quoting him, people have doubted them all season long. The underlying numbers suggest they still have some work to do. If you look at the important metrics in terms of, well, let's go expected goals, 5-on-5, the Bruins 27th in the NHL at 46.3%. If you look at even shot attempts or shots differential, the Bruins are 21st. If you look at scoring chances, the Bruins are 22nd. If you look at high danger chances, this is all at 5-on-5. The Bruins are 28th. So they're not generating the kind of sustained offensive pressure that you would expect from a playoff type club, but at 5-on-5, they're getting the scoring. They rank 6th in terms of shooting percentage, and in save percentage, they are also 6th. or 7th, I should say. So while the underlying numbers don't really support success for the Bruins this season, like defensively or even offensively, they're still getting the production, and that's ultimately what matters. You can track expected this or that until the cows come home, but it's about what has actually been achieved. They're in a position to fight for a playoff spot, and that they will continue to do, perhaps with some reinforcements here come the trade deadline. We'll talk about some of the latest rumors and reports, as well as the perceived value for Lohrei and Poitras here as the podcast continues. So there was a report last night, I believe, from Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period, suggesting that the Bruins are back in on Connor Garland from the Vancouver Canucks, and that a trade could involve either Mason Lohrei and or Matt Poitras. So the possibility there is that both of those guys could be floated in a deal to get Connor Garland. Garland, of course, is 29 years old, and he's got a no movement clause that kicks in next season when a new $6 million AAV contract kicks in, which will carry through the next 6 years. So he signed an extension with the Canucks. It hasn't even kicked in yet. He'll be under contract at $6 million for the next 6 years. And so far this season, he's only got 7 goals, 19 assists in 49 games for a total of 26 points. Now, why would it maybe require both of those guys? Well, Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic wrote this morning a piece called "What I'm Hearing About Matt Poitras and Mason Lohrei's Value." Poitras, of course, made the Bruins at 19, and he looked like a future second-line center for this team. He had some growing pains, a shoulder injury, sent back to Providence, where he is number 6 in scoring for the baby Bruins right now with 31 points in 49 games. They recalled him for 3 games in January, and, you know, he had a very nice goal against Tampa Bay, but apparently some around the league have noticed the steady lack of, upward momentum for his progress. According to an NHL director of amateur scouting, anonymous, word may be out that Poitras is no longer a sure thing. And if the Bruins, this is according to Fluto, consider him more of a trade asset than a keeper, a 1-for-1 return would not necessarily improve this team's playoff push. This director said, "I wouldn't trade for him personally. If they can recoup a second, that's a win." The Bruins, of course, have Elias Lindholm, Pavel Zacha, Fraser Minten, Sean Kuraly as centers right now. Poitras still learning to play a bit off the puck, and whether he becomes a center who can gain Sturm's full trust is not known. His entry-level contract expires after this season, and it's not just the guys in front of him. There's also some players behind him that will be pushing as well, including James Higgins, Dean Letourneau, Andre Gasso, all at Boston College. They all have different skill sets, but it could be that Poitras serves the Bruins better in a deal, Fluto writes. But given his trade value, he would not necessarily bring back an NHLer who could help the current roster. Sweeney wants to add to the group. If Poitras goes on his own, the GM might flip the return for an NHL player, or Poitras could be part of a package. So say the Bruins trade him for second or third round pick, they could package that to get some help, or as was suggested in that Garland report, maybe he's packaged alongside a Mason Lohrei. The director of scouting estimated a third round pick to be the left shot defenseman's trade value. Poitras was trending upward early in his career, defending never his strength, but he held his ground well enough for his coaches to let him do his thing on offense. He led the team in scoring from the blue line with 33 points last season, with Lindholm and McAvoy out of the lineup. He started this season on the top pair with Charlie McAvoy, but Jonathan Aspero came out of nowhere to be a better top fit with McAvoy. He has played much better lately on the right side with Hampus Lindholm, to his credit. And he's 25 years old, signed through 2027 at $3.2 million per season. They also have Jordan Harris in the mix. Andrew Peeke is still around. Frederic Brunet leads the Providence defense with 27 points in 52 games. Could be kind of an internal replacement. All that to say, like, if you hear or see reports involving Poitras, Lohrei, like, you can't expect, I guess, the Bruins to be able to get much in return for one of those guys singularly. Now, Pierre LeBrun this morning tweeted that it's going to be interesting to see what happens on the Simon Nemec front. Devils are taking calls on the second overall pick from 2022. No shortage of teams checking in. New Jersey happy to keep him, but if there's a deal that upgrades their forwards in a real way, they're going to entertain it. They're going to listen. Is Matt Poitras that guy? Is Poitras plus Lohrei enough to get Simon Nemec? That is a guy that fits perfectly with what the Bruins want to do here. Get younger, get better, add on the right side of the defense. Simon Nemec has a sparkling career ahead of him. I very much believe that. I've got him in my salary cap fantasy league. He's really played much better this season. 9 goals, 12 assists for 21 points in 47 games. And he's the kind of guy that could be a difference maker for the Bruins on the blue line. Maybe you are able to send a Matt Poitras plus Mason Lohrei to the Devils. I don't know if that's enough to get it done, quite honestly, but at the very least, you have to call. You have to be among the guys that are calling the New Jersey Devils in order to try to get Simon Nemec out of New Jersey, because he's that kind of talent that could really make a difference. Elsewhere, there's talk of Sergei Bobrovsky being traded from the Florida Panthers, who are pretty much out of it. Talks between the Blues and the Buffalo Sabres involving Robert Thomas appear to have quieted down a bit. Jordan Binnington could be in the trade mix. Colton Parayko is a guy that the Bruins could be looking at. There's so much going on right now that you're just going to want to keep it locked to Locked On Boston Bruins, because anytime there's a trade for the Bruins or a serious report out there, I'll be posting a short, getting it out there, discussing it, because that's what we do here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Right now, the Bruins, again, projected to not make the playoffs via The Athletic. They are projected to make the playoffs via Moneypuck. So depending on who you trust there, the reality is there's 21 games left, and the Bruins have a lot of work to do, including beating the Nashville Predators tomorrow night in the final game before the trade deadline. I should mention Andrew Peeke. He had been scratched the last couple games. He came back, played last night, 18 minutes, while paired with Nikita Zadorov, credited with 4 hits. Marco Sturm said he liked his game, played hard, did exactly what we want him to do, did a good job. Whether it was a showcase for a potential trade or just integrating him back into the lineup remains to be seen, but that's something to keep an eye on, certainly, as well. The Bruins could free up some cap space by moving Peeke and Lohrei. If you bring in Nemec, that's an ELC contract, so they'd still have some money freed up for another move as well. I'm very excited about the trade deadline. You're going to want to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, because I'm dropping bonus episodes this week. Bonus videos, shorts, reels, TikToks. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So please do subscribe, follow at Locked NHL Bruins if you have not done so already. Please consider joining the Everydayer Club. Would love to get more people into the Discord channel and involved in the conversation over there. You also get ad-free episodes. Please do check out the Locked On 24/7 National Podcast YouTube channel next. Locked On NHL Game Night with all the latest from around the NHL. It's all part of the Locked On Network. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team every single day.